Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Sass and Surrender. I am Drew Spanks on FetLife, or Drew,
And I fly away on FetLife or Fly.
and today we are talking about safe words. So,
All right, let's talk about basics. So I would say the most common safe words that people use are the stoplight system,
mhm,
which is red, yellow, green. Obviously, people make up all kinds of weird words like popsicle or
yeah,
something for safe words, which I would say would equate to a red
right,
because it's a stop.
yeah, because we'll run through what like the traffic light one is. So, like, green means good, everything's great, keep spanking me. Yellow means slow down, we're kind of pushing past where I'd like, and just take it easy, slow down. And then red means stop. So you would just stop completely. And I think when some people use like a weird word like popsicle, that would just be, yeah, like an automatic red, where
Right,
it'd be like they want the scene to stop when they say this word and they feel safe because they know that like they could ultimately just stop the scene.
right.
So,
Um, and then So, do you want to talk about like when you first started using them or seeing them
oh yeah. So
experience?
like, So I really didn't hear about safe words until probably my first play party that I went to, where that was kind of one of the opening things and first things that they talked about, which was, using that we use safe words at the party, and they went over that exact thing that we just said, the red light system, and to make sure you use them to play safe. I think in my younger years and started to play, like in my mind, we didn't need a safe word. Like I thought, when you're punishing, like, there shouldn't be a safe word, because it's a punishment. And now, like in my later years, like as I, got into the scene and started, learning things and keeping an open mind, I learned that how important safe words are. For the bottom's perspective and the top's perspective, it's just extremely important.
Yeah, the very first dynamic I had, fortunately, I didn't feel like I ever needed to call one, but we were both in our 20s and young and dumb too. He was definitely of that philosophy of like, well, it's a punishment. I decide how much pain you should get in the punishment. But one of the big things that we talked about with safe words at any time I'm in punishment is the other reasons besides the pain level that you might call a safe word. And that's really for me the biggest thing. Even if you are, say, submitting to a punishment, which obviously punishment should not be fun, like it's not the same as play. The pain level is more likely to be pushing your limit. But you could get a cramp, you could be a diabetic like you are, and your blood sugar could be going low. So those are things that, you know, people who subscribe to the philosophy of like there shouldn't be safe words and punishment, that's really where you're playing with fire, in my opinion, and pushing boundaries of things being dangerous. If you were, not that you're a bottom, but if you were and your blood sugar was getting low and you didn't have the ability to have a safe word, you would just pass out.
That's true. Very true. Yeah, and like that's why it's so important to have these safe words. And like I would say, I would strongly encourage, and very strong proponent of this, is if you come across a top that says he doesn't believe in safe words or she doesn't believe in safe words, I would never recommend anyone I know play with that person. That is not a safe way of playing. You could end up hurt emotionally, physically. There are just so many things wrong with that philosophy that I would tell you to turn and run. That's probably the biggest red flag I could say about a top you're looking at. If he says no safe words, I'm not interested in that, you need to submit to me. You can just say, all right, peace. Don't play with them. Because
Yeah.
it's like, it's just asking for problems. And I don't know if it's that top like stroking his ego or what it is, but that it's just not safe. It's
Yeah.
not safe at all.
Yeah, and I really, I would say that that's probably the biggest like excuse for not safe words is when it's surrounding a punishment. And it, there's also, a safe word doesn't necessarily mean the punishment is over. I have never called a safe word with you, and you've only punished me really once. That I would say is like a
Yeah,
real
like a
punishment
half punishment.
for breaking a rule as opposed to like, more maintenance and stuff. But anyway, but if for whatever reason I was to call red and it was a punishment, that doesn't mean we wouldn't revisit the punishment.
Right, like at a later time.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're tapping out on the pain or tapping out on the punishment or refusing to take it. There's a million and one reasons that you could call a safe word. And honestly, Headspace is, in my opinion, totally valid and huge factor in that. One of the things personally for me that I struggle with as a heavy player is not seeing calling a safe word as tapping out. I've never called red in any play that I've done. I'll get into it more in a minute of the time that I should have. But for me, that's something, and I've seen a lot of writings on this too from other heavier players that, lean masochistic, or maybe it was during a punishment that they called red and they're writing about how it was actually a great experience that they overcame, that feeling that they're letting their partner down, that they're not accepting of the punishment or they're not accepting of whatever their dom wants to dish out. But it's so important to try to not see it that way. And personally, I that's something I have to work on, even though I'm saying it now. But it's hard in the moment, especially when you're feeling punished and you're feeling like you're getting a punishment to be like, well, no, I'm not. I can't take this anymore. But like I said, I would think that if it was a punishment, we certainly wouldn't end the punishment. It would be a pause. We would regroup. We would figure out what's going on and we would do it, later.
Yeah, yeah, like what caused the red? Not necessarily like was it you were in a bad position, you weren't in the right headspace for the punishment, like or was it the implement being used? Like what was the reasoning for it? Because obviously the reasoning for the punishment is to, spark change, like and punish, a rule that was broken. When it comes to like the safe words and things like that, most of the areas that I've used it for is like normally like establishing new dynamics or new play partners. So, like I have a scale. I don't think I've told you this in the past episodes, but my scale of player is normally you have light to medium, medium to heavy, and then heavy. So I find that the safe words are most helpful when it comes to a light player because I don't know what their version of way too much or too heavy is. For some light players, a hand spanking could be just over the top and way too much for them. Or maybe they're great with implements, like so it's a good way to scale that in the moments. Like sometimes we'll do like the number scale too, like where they'll be like, okay, I'm in the middle of the swing, like on a 1 to 10, how where are you at, and where on the safe word color spectrum are you? Like, is that like a yellow 5? And like just really trying to like dive into that. But like even like just recently when I played at a party with someone I hadn't spanked before, but I knew she was a heavy player, that scale and that safe word just it didn't really come into play because I know she's a heavy player. I know she can take it. I'm not as worried about, you know, going too hard or going too far to where safe words would come into play. But I normally just do more like conversational check-ins, like how you doing? How is that? Is your butt sore? Like I don't know,
Yeah,
probably snarky comments too, like
you're such a brat.
like I bet you learned your lesson now, young lady.
No, I do think I checking in color wise, I would say is probably the best with new players. I did have a top that I played with once, and he was a really great play partner, honestly. But the first time we played, he did do the number thing. He would like smack me with something and be like, "Oh, what number is that?" And for me personally, that's a really hard question to answer, like to really put a number on it because you know to me, it's like, well, is it 10 out of 10? Like you have to stop playing? Like, so like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
sure.
Or is it 10 out of 10? Like, I don't want you to do that again. Like, but I don't need to stop playing, which is why I really like color system. Uh,
Well, and those check-ins can like really break up the headspace. So like
yeah.
if you're in the moment and you're like really going, oh, man, I was really naughty girl, I'm gonna get spanked hard here. And
Well,
so
like,
somebody's like, hey, was that a 5 or a 6 or
yeah.
how are you
Um,
feeling? Like it
it was
might just really
definitely
ruin
no, and that I did. So in that time that I played with that, I did feel that a little bit, like it was a little awkward and a couple times he asked, so I don't know how to answer that. Like I didn't say, "Ow, keep spanking me, it's fine." But I did appreciate it. I
Yeah.
really appreciated his thoroughness in making sure that he was learning my limits. I would much rather have that than someone who doesn't check in, which I've played with too, and I've overplayed before. So, and we didn't do that after that first spanking. Like after that, we did it. He didn't ask me numbers and things like that. It was only the very first time, but it was still I felt like he really was very attentive to making sure that he wasn't going to push my limits. And I think that's something that's super important with particularly with heavier players. And like I was saying, it's something for me to have to work on where I have played past my limit. It was only once. And I
Wasn't with me, just for
no,
the record.
it was not with him. And I do really remember my headspace shifting from to like fear almost. Like I was afraid to just to do anything really, but like stop the scene, not to like and I think and I hope in retrospect, I think one of the big reasons that I didn't call red was just because I had never experienced that before. I'm not even close to it, and I don't think it really even registered, and I didn't really process it until after. So I think for me, it was kind of a good experience that that happened. I mean, it sucked. I was very emotional after, but I dropped really bad, probably the worst I've ever dropped. But I now know what it feels like to hit that point. And I think one of the big reasons I didn't call red is because I didn't really process it well and realize in that moment that that's what I needed to do. So I think the silver lining of that is now I know how that feels.
Yeah,
And I would like to think that I
you
would
would
call
call it.
red in the future. And there was at the time that you and I played that I almost did several times. And that was one of the really for me it was super amazing scene for us. And we both wrote about it on our Pet Life pages was how many times I got close and didn't have to. So we played very heavily, obviously, and I do really I a lot of it is a blur. Like it was a hefty beating, and it was a lot. It was,
Right. Like on a lot of different levels.
yeah, it was hefty. Anyway, but I do I and a lot of it is kind of blurred together. But I do have a very vivid memory of one of the times where in my head I'm saying, "Stop, stop, please stop. I don't, stop, stop." And then it started to turn into the thoughts like, "Red, I think I need to stop this. Like, I'm gonna call red," and then you stopped. And that's something, obviously the top has to trust that the bottom will be able to stay red when they need to. However, you also have to, as a top, I feel like, be good at reading that because especially for me, and I would imagine players that are similar to my level, I don't, I get so caught up in the headspace in the moment that I don't that I could easily overplay without even realizing.
Well, I think that goes even for people who aren't heavy players, like let's say a medium player or whatever, they could really overplay and the next day they're like black and blue and just like not in a good headspace because they went over what their limit is, it could really affect you like on a lot of different levels. But it's so important too for the tops to read that. Like it's something I feel and like I don't know if it's experience or the love and care I put into the people like that I do spank or do have like dynamics or play partners and things like that. But like I know their limits and I can sense when we're pushing, really far or where they're getting you the edge. And you have to have that knowledge as a top to really go in there and make the call to kind of like stop or take a break or pause or use it as time for encouragement. That's something I've seen a lot of tops do, and I do it sometimes. But I love seeing like praise get worked into, those safe word moments where you're like, man, you're doing a good job. You're taking this like a champ. You're doing so good. It's a good check-in moment to be like, hey, are you doing good enough to continue? Like, kind of like that
Right.
kind of thing. Because the other thing that I thought of when we're thinking about these safe words too is like, you don't want to stop, you don't want to stop with there being, more gas in the tank, like more desire there. Like if you stop too soon as a top and, they weren't done and they wanted you to keep going, like you could ruin the scene. I mean, maybe not ruin it, but you know what I mean?
Make
Like
it underwhelming. But
make it underwhelming. What is it that the young kids are saying? Beige.
beige.
Instead of calling like, yeah, this
One
is
of
not.
our friends told us you could call beige and that means you're bored.
But
Start beating me harder.
I love that
I think
though.
that's
I
hilarious.
think it's funny, and it's
Um,
great. No, because it's really important. And maybe that's not a safe word, but it's another thing you could work into your like dynamic or your play partnership, like some kind of a word where like beige, like, hey, keep pushing, keep going. I want you to do more. Like I don't want you to stop. I I I think it's all super helpful as a top. I think the safe words are great. I mean, like even from the perspective of me, I'm like a very forgetful person, getting older, losing that memory. But like if
and you play with a lot of people,
play with a lot of people,
so it's hard to remember
every little
everything
thing,
there.
because there's a lot of people that won't play with certain implements like, belts or canes or things like that. So it's important as a bottom that you can call that even for like your hard limits. Like maybe this person didn't comb over every part of your FetLife profile or whatever, even if you didn't meet on FetLife, maybe they don't know some of these things. It's important to have those moments with them to be like, say they pull out a belt and they're about to beat you with a belt and that's your hard limit, for you to say red. And then they're gonna stop. If they're a good top, they're gonna stop and they're gonna be like, what's going on? Is everything okay? Like what's happening? And you can be like, hey, I have a hard limit. It's belts. Beat me with something else. Like it's important though because then if the top doesn't know and you never express it, like you could end up hurt. Maybe there's past trauma there. Like you want to make sure you're like saying these things, and it's a good opportunity. Any good top is not going to take offense to you yelling any of these things, like yellow, red, whatever it is. They should want to check in on you and find out what's wrong, what they can do to help, how they can continue. Right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Have you ever had someone call while playing on you?
No.
Mm.
I think the only thing I've had called on me was yellow.
Yeah.
Very rarely. I think you were
Yeah.
with me.
Mm.
And the bottom was just like I think you were like holding your hands or
Yeah.
something. And she got yellow but it was good. It was like I was like, all right, cool. Because once again it gives me perspective because I'm like, okay, slow down, take it easy. Like, it was just really good. And I was able to adjust. I didn't take offense to it. She felt safe. Like it was a good environment.
Yeah. And I think that you know, I don't think I'd be put in a situation where I'd play past my limits again because I'd never play with someone that hard that wasn't you.
Right.
But I think that was the biggest thing for me was it was like my feelings really turned to fear in that moment. And that, that should never be how it is. Even in a punishment. Even in a punishment being like obviously like there's a little fear of the punishment, but I never feel fear in your hand. I always know I'm gonna be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a huge thing is feeling cared for, at least for me.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everyone, but
Yeah.
that's something that I really learned a lot in my journey of playing, especially with the heavy playing, is it has to come, or especially even the punishment kind of, that it has to come from a place of you caring about me and wanting what's
Yeah.
best for me, not that you're just there to beat me for whatever reason you can come up with is great. Certainly the more serious things like punishment for me, it has to come from a place of care and feeling safe. And if you take away safe words, you are not safe. Like that's the bottom line. They're literally called safe words. And you're really, in my mind, you're not fully consenting.
Right.
If you And I mean, sure, you consent, whatever, you agree to the spanking, I guess. But that's why you shouldn't play with people who don't let you have safe words.
Public safety announcement number 2. If you meet a top and he says or she says they don't believe in safe words, don't play with that top. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I wouldn't tell my worst enemy to play with that top. It's just not safe. Like, there's no safe words. It's not safe. It's like the biggest red flag you can have from a top's perspective that you shouldn't play with them. They should want to have safe words. They should want to make you feel safe, comfortable, not afraid. They should make you want to feel cared for. Like I wrote about it. There, we're going to reference a million things we've written about. Strongly recommend you friend us, follow us on FetLife. Go read our readings. There's a lot of really good
Go
like
read our reading.
read our oh, not
Writing.
our writings. Read our writings because there's a lot of really good like juicy tidbits in there and some really deep stuff that we've dove in dove in dip,
Dived.
dive
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
dive into on our FetLife. go read those go read those readings. You know what I'm saying? Um, because there's some really good stuff in there. But like relational spanking is one that I read on. I don't really play with people like on a deeper level that I haven't like had some kind of relationship with, like of care. Like I want to get to know the person I'm spanking. There are one-offs at parties. Like I've had people like, "Hey, can you spank me?" I'm like, "Sure." Like I don't know
And
this
that's
person.
different.
That's
The tone
different,
is very different.
different,
Very light.
playful, fun. But like those like like punishment spankings or like life change spankings, like that kind of stuff. I save that for the people that I've taken time. I've learned about who they are. I know their desires, their needs. I have a friendship and, like, I don't want, it's not like a dating relationship, but like a relationship with them. So I call it relational spanking, where you have taken the time to get to know this person over a period of time and there's trust there on both sides. So from the top side, from the bottom side, there's trust. And I really think that's important because a lot of this spanking stuff, we're dealing with deep, 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 deep thoughts, deep emotions, lifetimes of feeling this kind of thing. And it's super, super, super important that you're being cognizant of that and really taking that into consideration when you're spanking a person. Because this is stuff that can affect them for a long time, both emotion, mainly emotionally, because the physicality of it, that as much as we like to be like, you're not going to sit for
Oh, wait.
a week. Yeah, it's really probably like 1 to 2 days if you're like great and you like if I beat you like the bejesus out of you, you're probably like a day later you're fine, right? Like
Well, yeah, but
you can poke your bruise and like it.
I'm probably a little tougher than most with that.
I don't know, but I'm just saying like Even
Yes.
even a weakling.
Yeah. A few
It's like
days. I
it's
don't
it,
know. I see some really nice bruises on that I'm awfully jealous of.
that's
But
true. That's
um but yeah, I think that was one of the big things with me and my journey is the importance of feeling that connection. And it was for me, my kink and my spanking kink means disciplinary. So I prefer it to be for a punishment reason at least or some so I had gone into playing with new people like I want it to be more like punishment and I have learned over time that it can't just because I want things to be disciplinary doesn't mean they'll feel disciplinary if there's not that connection. It feels very empty for me, which is fine for fun and play. But I've learned that, I had to stop chasing that. Well, now I have you, but that initially when I started playing, I had to learn that I needed to stop chasing that feeling because I was putting myself in the hands of people that I don't want to say they didn't care about me. Like I've been fortunate, and I would like to say this even with the time that I overplayed, there's no blame on that for me on that person, but I definitely learned a lot in that experience about needing that deeper connection, making sure there's more time of building a relationship and a friendship because it just doesn't do it for me. And I had to learn that chasing that feeling of being disciplined like was not going to happen until I found that couldn't be the first step for me. Like I always wanted spanking to be a punishment. It seems like that's how it should be. Like that's how my king is. But I had to learn over time that like that's not you can't go into it like that. We I mean now obviously no one would ever punish me besides you, but I had been punished by people here and there that it just didn't feel like it for me. And for me, Headspace is a huge part of that. And if I'm not having that emotional connection where I feel like you're punishing me for my benefit, it's just not going to do it for me. It just feels empty. And that's how I ended up in situations where I was playing with people without safe words, where I was overplaying because I was chasing this thing that wasn't ever going to happen until I found someone with a better connection. And so that was something I had to work on, and it's still something I have to work on in terms of, not thinking that calling red is a bad thing or getting too wrapped up in the headspace where I'm overdoing it, which is again why it's so important for me to have a top that really does check in, that really knows my limits because I sometimes need the top to be the one that's like, you need a break.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, and like I said, I sense that in our spanking. It's just something I feel and I can tell, like, can tell the ebb and flow of a spanking, like, and where she is in that moment. And I do think I mean, it's because we love each other, obviously,
Well, we have a connection, but I feel like
but also, like, I can pick that up. I can pick that up with other people too. So
you're a very attentive top. I think that's a huge thing that, you know, I don't want to say a lot of tops are lacking, but I think a lot of people don't realize maybe the emotional effect that some of this has, and that's how people end up in situations where they overdo it or they're playing with people that aren't good fit for them because they don't really think of how much that can deeply affect you.
yeah. And the other advice I give as well is be open to learn because like all this stuff, well, number one, all this stuff that we're talking about this so that we can teach and people can learn these things from either mistakes we've had or successes we've had, different things like that. Like, so be open to learn because everything I learned about safe words, I learned from the people in the community around me. I obviously thought through these things. Like, I didn't take it as this is the one way. But keeping that open mind and keeping that like learning mindset is super, super important in these situations because it's it, especially if, well, I think you need to be learning from people that are safe, So, public announcement number three: if you meet a top and he says he doesn't want to leave in safe words, don't play with that top.
That was number 2? Or are you just repeating
No,
it now?
no, that was 3. I think that was
No, you
3.
just said
I
3.
said it once, then I said it
Oh, you're
twice,
saying it 3 times.
3
I get it.
times. Yeah,
That's how important it is, guys.
it's super important.
We got 3 public safety announcements
3 public safety
in
announcements
one podcast.
in one podcast. But learn from people that are safe because it's gonna benefit you. It's gonna help you from getting hurt in the wrong ways. Because, like I said, this spanking thing is super deep, super emotional, and it's important. I mean, these safety words, these safe words are just so important. I can't stress it enough. That's why we did a podcast on it and talked about it.
Yeah, and even I think we did already talk. Even if you were punishing me, like you would still stop if I called red. And I
Always,
would still be able to do that.
always.
And there's like I said, a million reasons I have read, post on Fet where, it was really just her headspace. She was getting angry. She wasn't feeling like she was accepting of her punishment, and something was off with her, emotional state, which is a totally valid reason.
Hmm.
And I think it's hard, especially if you're someone who's, discipline is a thing, to be like, well, I don't want this punishment right now. But it's okay to be like that. You have to remember, like, you are still a consenting adult, and you have the right at any time to say, I am not comfortable right now
Right,
for whatever reason.
100%.
And, does that mean that the scene has to stop indefinitely? No. Does it mean that the scene has to end and everybody goes home? No. But you can still take that moment and need that moment.
Yeah, it's super important. Can't stress it enough. Play safely, play with safe words. That's the biggest thing with this, and hopefully this is kind of giving you guys some insight into the way we use them, things that we've learned over the years from our experiences, and I hope you take it, and I hope you learn from it.
Yeah, because I've been very fortunate in the couple times that I've overplayed or played with someone without a safe word that nothing too terrible happened to me. I had a bad emotional experience. I dropped really bad, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, I I consider myself lucky that I didn't end up in a situation where I got more hurt emotionally or physically, because I definitely was a little reckless early on in my playing. And I talk to people that are younger that, I worry about that stuff for them, because I do see that in this kind of, and when I first started playing, I was in my early 20s, and that's where I ended up in the dynamic with no safe words. And again, nothing too terrible happened. I don't even think there was any point with that person that I would have called red anyway. But that's just luck that that worked out that way.
Yeah,
It was still putting myself in a dangerous situation. You should always, always be able to stop for whatever reason. And you don't have to feel like it's just because you're tapping out on the pain or you can't take punishment or whatever. Um,
yeah, and have conversations about it. Like ahead of time. I think it's good to talk to the top, make sure that you feel safe, and make sure that you know you discuss this, and he knows what or she knows what you're gonna say and what you're gonna do, so they're aware. And because if you never said anything about, I think everybody knows a green light thing, but maybe they don't, and you're like red, and he's like, I don't know what that means. Great, keep going. Like there's just no way to know.
what? You want your butt red?
Yeah, you want it red? Okay, I'm making it red. It's black and blue. No, like it's just, yeah, just make sure you have these conversations. Like it's important, like whatever it's about, whatever you need to stop a scene for, stop the scene for. If it's an implement you can't take,
If your blood sugar's low,
blood sugar's low, anything. Yeah, so that's our podcast on safe words. Speaking of implements, next podcast we're going to talk about implements.
woohoo.
Yeah, we've got a butt ton of them.
We do have a lot of implements.
That was another thing I was going to say. Not to squirrel off on you guys. I also strongly recommend when you're playing with a new bottom, like I call it running the bag, but like go through your bag of implements and just kind of like go through them with them, like in a fun, kind of playful way. Because, yeah, we do that. So you can learn what they like and don't like, what they're going to call red on, or what they're going to like a lot. Just say green all day. What
I
leather?
remember that.
Leather with you, right?
Yeah.
Leather all day. So then when I get leather, I
We'll
just
talk
try to
about that
hit her
next
as
time.
hard as I can.
I'll
Oh yeah,
talk about that next
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I do have a memory of when we first played together and you were going through all my stuff. But
Yeah.
I'll share it next time.
Yeah. So tune in again next time. We're going to talk about implements and make sure you follow us on FetLife. Read all those readings because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Check out our video.
Check out our videos and stuff. And hope you guys are getting a lot out of this podcast. We love making it. And for the record, this is the second time we recorded this specific one. We lost it. I just wanted to say, Michael, it was,
You're silly.
we tried to get all the good tidbits back in it.
I think we actually did better on this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, maybe it's a little less swirly.
Yeah, now it's getting worse again. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, we'll see you. We'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe and friend us on FetLife. We'll talk to you soon.